mysteries of creation are there.
In the sky. Up in the sky.
The moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there.
Welcome, group. Today, I would like to welcome back the infamous James Moran. Is that how you say your last name, James?
Yes.
Yeah, archetypal astrologer. He's done a talk with us in the past about archetypal astrology, which is under the media section in the group. He's also got a YouTube channel. So would you just type in James Moran in the YouTube channel?
Yeah, or Archetypal News Network, either one.
Right. Okay. So it's also on there, and he's also a writer, doing primarily short stories. And I'm going to get him back in a couple of months to talk about that when we're in Authorship Month. But today we are talking about, it's a bit of a heavy subject, but it needs to be talked about because it's coming up sooner rather than later. We're talking about planet Pluto and its ingress into the sign of Aquarius. So, James, what would you like to say about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got Pluto approaching Aquarius in the next couple years that will be setting foot there and then beginning its long journey through Aquarius that will be for several years, for over a decade. And so Pluto,
something like that. It goes roughly 20 years or so, the transit.
Yeah, well, actually the orbit of Pluto is uneven, so it will transit faster through some signs and slower through others. So it was in for instance, it's been about, what is it, 15 years it's been in Capricorn. Capricorn.
It was 15 years in Scorpio.
Okay, and it's in Capricorn now. It's been there for about, it's coming up on 15 years, I think so.
I think 2008 it went in, and what are we now? 2022.
So we're coming up on 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years. So yeah, close. So by the time it leaves totally, it'll be probably about 17 years.
Around there, yeah. So so it's a big transit, it's like it tends to give some characteristics to a larger span of time that we can notice when we look back. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about also some of the transits that Pluto will go through with the other outer planets during that same transit through Aquarius, which have a similar symbolism, which is going to all lend itself to kind of the picture of really the next decade at least that we go through. And so Aquarius, well, actually, let's begin talking about Pluto. So Pluto, the archetype of Pluto, has to do with elemental power. The Pluto in the Greco-Roman mythology was the god of the underworld, and there's a number of characteristics associated with the astrological archetype of Pluto that resonate and are similar with qualities exhibited in that Greco-Roman mythology of the god Pluto, who was actually relegated to the underworld. He was, when the gods kind of split up their roles, he took the role of being the one presiding over the underworld. And as such, he kind of entered into an agreement where he could never come up from the underworld, because the underworld is the place where, in order for souls to go down into it, they have to go through transformation process. That's the transformation of going through death. And so Pluto's down in the underworld and it was not seen. And so in that metaphor, you get a lot of qualities linked up with that can be mapped onto the astrological archetype of Pluto. Like, for instance, the astrological archetype of Pluto is associated with the hidden, that which is hidden, that which is transformative and associated with a death rebirth process, just like the souls that die, they go down into the underworld. And also power. So we get the power dynamic. If you imagine looking at, for instance, like the earth, the land, on the surface of the earth, it could look quite placid, yet beneath it there's enormous power in the actual, what was considered the underworld during the Greco-Roman times, that which is beneath the earth. And so if we see what's beneath the seemingly placid earth when it comes up in a volcano, for instance, it's like this elemental power, this kind of fiery elemental power that can transform a landscape. And so Pluto's associated with that which is hidden, that which is transformative, can bring about a death rebirth process. Pluto's associated with power, elemental power. And as elemental power, it's also linked up with like the power of nature. Nature can be described sometimes as kind of like this destructive force. If we see like a forest fire, or we see some type of giant storm or earthquake, we think of the powers of nature. And those same things that from one side can look very destructive, from the other side, once we've gone beyond them, they can look like a rebirth. Like a forest fire can seem very destructive. But on the other side, you know, once the forest fire is over, we see that the forest actually thrives because the old, you know, kind of broken down growth has been kind of composted by the fire, and there's a lot of fresh area for new growth to catch sunlight. And so it's rebirth as well. It's that death and rebirth process associated with the power of nature, also the power of the instincts, the kind of natural powers inside of living animals, beings, like their instincts, their drives, their natural drives. And also kind of the power of the masses, like for instance, masses of humans. If masses of humans get together, they kind of exhibit a power of nature. They become a kind of one of those waves of nature in action. So all that is associated with Pluto. And the sign of Aquarius is a sign that is, it's an air sign, and a sign that's associated with somewhat forward thinking kind of, there's different sectors that are kind of associated with Aquarius, like for instance, forward thinking, socially progressive kind of movements and institutions. That's something that's associated with Aquarius. Also, to some extent, kind of technological innovation, things that are for the betterment of the society, particularly if they have a kind of like an edgy, forward looking angle to them. And so Pluto entering into Aquarius is, we can think of it in a general sense as an infusion into the sign of Aquarius, an infusion into the sign of the zodiac that is associated with these technological innovations and these kind of these kind of socially conscious movements towards the betterment of society, getting infused with this elemental power, this kind of evolutionary power. And it can look like masses of people becoming like kind of empowered, or somehow as if their natural instincts are somehow getting activated to drive them towards this social betterment piece that's associated with Aquarius. Also technological, you know, there can be like this infusion of this kind of powerful plutonic fuel, this elemental force and power of nature, and instinctual drive towards technological innovation, which isn't that much of a stretch if we think about where we're at now. You know, we're entering into a new era of space exploration.
I was
You know,
I was just about to say, James, that Aquarius is very futuristic. It's
right.
a very, like if you were to pick the sign that rules Star Trek or Star Wars, you know, I'm sure, I haven't had a look at Gene Roddenberry's chart, who was the founder of Star Trek. I got that one right, yeah. But I'm sure he's got strong Aquarius in his chart, because he was the one that sort of started all of this starry stuff, you know. And being Aquarian, like, really, it's a really futuristic, and the mass of people coming together, it's almost like they have a mission, you know.
Right.
Especially when it's in the humanitarian sign, which Aquarius rules, like they've got this mission. So,
right.
you know, this collective, it can be an energy which is it's fortified, and it's like, it's resilient in a way, if you know what I mean.
That it's exciting. I mean, we can kind of, I think we can catch wind a bit of it already, in the sense, you know, we can see the setup. We can see that there's this new leaning towards space exploration. There's a lot of kind of we in general are in a kind of technological age, which, some might associate with the age of Aquarius or something like that. But we're in a kind of an age of technology, and that's not going to dampen. That's not going to decrease. We're not going to go back.
It's going to go forward.
It's just going to increase and move forward. And so Pluto kind of driving into Aquarius could be part of that. Part of
Yes,
this.
I tend to agree with that.
Impulsion and impulse to develop technologically, and then also there's an aspect of social movements, that could see this kind of plutonic power infusion, and that, so very interesting that is happening at the same time as, so this a planetary archetype that is somewhat related to Aquarius and it's considered kind of a modern rulership is Uranus, because Uranus is also associated with forward thinking, the ability for technological innovation, the aha moment, the kind of electric, exciting leaps of breakthroughs. And so as Pluto enters Aquarius, pretty much right around the beginning of Aquarius, as it goes into what's called a trine with Uranus, because Uranus is going to be at the end of Taurus and the beginning of Gemini, another air sign. Pluto will be in Aquarius, the air sign. They'll be in what's called a harmonious trine to each other, with Neptune sextile to both. So basically what that means is all three outer planets, what are called the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, will be in harmonious angles to each other. And that's going to last for 10 years. It started kicking a little bit. It'll be a little bit more within wide orb in 2023. It'll go towards till 2033. And so as Pluto transits the entire first half of Aquarius, that symbolism of the plutonic infusion of evolutionary drive in a kind of a technological direction gets supported symbolically by that trine to Uranus as well. And so Uranus and Pluto together historically have been, when they come into aspect, that volcanic power of Pluto tends to drive the Uranian breakthroughs, the Uranian kind of leaps in technological advances. And in a hard aspect, when they're in a hard angle to each other, it's a little bit rocky. We had that in the 60s, and it really had a lot of propulsion to it. We got to the moon, a lot of advances of going into space, a lot of technological advances, though it's when it's in hard aspect, like it was even in the 2010s, it was in hard aspect as well. It can be rocky. It can feel like kind of like you're blasting off in a rocket, leaving the atmosphere, and the whole thing's kind of shaking and rattling. Whereas when it's in a soft aspect, a harmonious angle, like a trine, things just kind of segue together more easily. And so Pluto's entering into Aquarius right as it's going into that trine with Uranus. And it's kind of the entry of Pluto into Aquarius, and that segueing soft angle tends to lend a quality of just easy opening of those two archetypes combining as technological advancement, as kind of sociological freedom movements and advancements. And so that's nice. It gives the sense that during the hard aspects, the real tough work was done, so that during the soft aspects, we can just kind of surf into the next advancement. So like, for instance, Uranus and Pluto were in hard aspect through the 2010s, from like, I don't know, 2008, 2009 until around 2020, 2021. And that's when this whole space, that's when this figure of Elon Musk started to come to rise. That's when these kind of this private sector of space exploration started to get traction. And it was really like, it was a lot of exerting of effort to get that energy back into play in the society. Whereas when the trine comes in, usually the sense is, oh, the effort's been put in, now the doors can open a little bit more easily. And so that's exciting, that's really exciting. There's a few other ways it showed up, which I'm happy to talk about, but I'm happy to entertain any questions if you have any.
I was watching something on TV. I think it was with Richard Branson. I think it was him. He was charging, now I could be wrong on the pricing, but I think it was $250,000 for a seat to go to space for 11 minutes.
Wow. Crazy.
And he had competition. There was someone else doing something similar. So,
Wow.
In our lifetime, depending on how financial you are, you can actually get to space if you actually want. We may not be living there in this lifetime. Well, not in my lifetime anyway. But if you wanted to, you could actually get to space.
I know, that's exactly it. That's such an advancement. It's like, I saw Elon Musk also, this was maybe 5 years ago, he put a call out for artists, and I don't know what, artists and scientists or something, and if they qualify, if they have kind of like an outstanding life of accomplishment, they win a seat on this ship that goes to the moon. I don't think necessarily lands on the moon, but it kind of does. I mean, maybe it does, but I think it goes like on a sightseeing thing by the moon. So yeah, that's a world that, I remember, like, usually when technology first comes out, it's expensive, and then people figure out ways that it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And like cell phones was like, only like
you never buy something at the beginning of a product. You wait for it to go through its product cycle.
Right. Now everybody's got a cell phone, and so we can envision that for space, like where it's like not uncommon for us to enter into space, which brings up a whole lot of astrological questions, because space is the realm of the planetary bodies that we talk about in astrology.
But the other thing is, living in space is the future. I mean, everything we see on Star Wars and Star Trek and all the rest of it, it's fictional, but I feel it is based on what could be. I was reading an article on the sun today, because I keep an eye out on what's happening with the sun when the solar flares. And an astrophysicist, I can't remember his name, it was some name that was very hard to pronounce. Anyway, apparently the sun is 4.5 billion years old. And in about 1 billion years, and it may not sound like much, but the sun is actually going to exhaust itself out. And of course, the earth cannot live without the sun, because it provides everything that we need to live and grow. So whether it be now or in 1 billion years or towards that time frame, the earth is actually on an expiry date. So thinking about it like that, and I know it seems so far in the future, but if we can be taught about the dinosaurs and remember the dinosaurs of way back when, and they existed because we have fossils, etc., then in X amount of years' time, we're going to be the dinosaurs of the future.
Amen. Yeah, well put. I like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was in the bank the other day, and I was saying to the woman, all this technology, I'm just so tired of it all, because I just love things to be very simple. I'm aware and I accept that the world is changing, and we have to change to move to where we need to be. I get that. And the astrology is supporting it. But, can't even get money out of the bank unless you've got a credit card. You can't do this unless you've got a PIN number. You can't do this unless you've got a barcode. It's like everything is just so interlinked with technology. And there's going to be more coming out when Pluto starts to pick up momentum going through the sign of Aquarius. There's going to be more and more stuff coming out, Yeah,
it's a good point. I mean, if that's one kind of quality that for us to be wary of, is that when Pluto goes through Aquarius, it's an air sign, it's kind of heady. It's a kind of heady energy. It's not necessarily like always embodied and kind of having that emotional connection energy. So there can be a bit of that kind of overactive upper cortex type headiness. Yeah, it's worth
I hear you, because we are electric energy ourselves, or ethereal energy, however you term to put it, which is still related to the electrical stuff. I mean, our heart is an electrical pump, for example. Our brain is electrical synapses going ding, 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 ding all the time. And I just feel that when when this Pluto moves into Aquarius, and at that time there won't be a lot of, if any Earth planets, any planets in Earth signs out of the major 5. There's going to be a lot of conditions, medical conditions around the nervous system, the electrical system of the body, the brain, the central nervous system. There's going to be a whole lot of new conditions coming out that we haven't seen to date.
Wow. Yeah.
So
that sounds reasonable. That sounds very prescient.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean,
you can already see that the exposure the average human has to social media and to digital interface is so, like, it's so close to our senses, and so
and that
kind of
disturbs connections in our body. And of course, we've got 5G, we've got computers, we've got the phone, and this is all Uranus. We've got electric cars now, we've got Bitcoin, and it's all electrical. And I saw something about Bitcoin on TV a few months ago, and they went underground, Pluto, underground, and they had all the Bitcoin machines that were going, the computers for the Bitcoin that were going 24/7. Can you imagine how much power they're taking away from the Earth?
Wow.
By running these things 24/7.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one thing we could hope for is Pluto, is airy as a sign as Aquarius is, and as heady as it is, Pluto is a deep archetype associated with depth, kind of mysterious depth. So maybe it can, as it enters Aquarius, it can draw our technological savvy, our kind of instinct towards technological advancement into a bit of a deeper, mysterious kind of encounter that has a bit more soul and depth to it, and may even transform to some extent our relation to technology, which I think would be good.
Hopefully, I would be really on board with that, and I know you would be too. And hopefully, that would be something that can be achieved with that sextile to Neptune.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So anyone listening out there who's into IT big time, think about your Neptune. People are going to be fried from the inside out because of all this overstimulation. And of course, mental diseases on the rise. And and I hate to say it, but 5G and intense, forever on their computers, they've got their friend right next to them, and instead of talking to them, they're TikToking them or whatever it is they're doing. I mean, this is really throwing out the body's ability to communicate and to do what it needs to do in the body on a healthy level.
Yeah. So look out for those water signs, those earth signs. Check out where your moon is at. This Saturn's at, and definitely we want to take care of ourselves. I think it can be good. This Pluto transit through Aquarius can be good, and the 3 outer planets in harmonious aspect to each other for a decade can be great. We just want to take care of ourselves, because it's the same as, like, if you think of your mind as constantly carrying current over the cells within your brain, we sleep, we rest, we want to be able to have a chance to turn off. So those pathways that carry current can kind of like resheath themselves. It's almost like if you have a wire in your house that's got that rubber coating, you don't want to push so much current through it that the thing gets burned and fried, and if it does, you want to replace it. You want to make sure that always, like, your whole nervous system has its coating of its kind of fluids and everything that is able
fluids, magnesium, calcium, and fish oils.
Yeah, nice. So that you can carry that energy, because there is
Yeah.
there is a, probably a strong current collectively running through us now, and as Pluto goes through Aquarius. So if we can carry that well, and we can get all the rest we need, and we can kind of fortify ourselves to carry that, then I think it can be good.
No, I think the thing I love about astrology is that foreknowledge prepares you, and then it is up to you to take that responsibility to do the things that you need to do on a daily basis. Because when the 5 planets move, and they all would have moved by 2024, there will be none of those planets will be in earth signs or water signs for that matter. So there'll be no grounding. And we are spiritual, in my opinion, we are spiritual beings in physical bodies. So we need to look after our spiritual selves as well as our physical selves. And part of that physical nurturing is to be grounded. So we kind of don't kind of feel kind of separate from ourselves, if you know what I mean. So with all those planets in fire and air signs from 2024 onwards, grounding and working on the base chakra and all those other things are going to be needed to be done on a daily basis. And I feel these things should be taught in schools from a very early age, because these are going to be the children born into this era.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
if they're going to be born with the sun in an earth sign, then, they've got a bit of a blessing. But if they're not, no earth, no water in the chart.
Right. Yeah. So we adults need to kind of embody that for them and show how to stay grounded.
So we need to be doing this. When I was in India, and James, you would appreciate this because I know you've been to India yourself. I was staying with a doctor friend of mine and his wife, and she was an air hostess, and they had a couple of kids. And I used to ask them about what it was like for them to go to school. And they said, oh, well, in the morning we start with yoga.
Nice.
And then we do meditation. And these were just the youngest kids. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, they've got it down. But to them, because it was part of their schooling, it was just what they did every day.
Wow.
They had yoga and they had meditation and they had it every day.
Love it.
And it was just like, oh my God, we need this in the West, need to be taught at the school level. Anyway, I get a bit carried away sometimes. So sorry, James, to interrupt you. So as we know, Pluto has got a 240 to 48 year cycle as it goes around the chart. So it hasn't really been 18th century was the last time we had Pluto move into the sign of Aquarius.
Yeah, it was like around 1780 till around 1800.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that time exhibited a lot of the kind of social, forward-thinking social welfare elements of Pluto, kind of on a mass scale. There's kind of like this mass level movement, which is quite common with Pluto, as just like a wildfire kind of spreading as like a mass movement towards something. And in this case, at that time, there were these kind of socially forward-thinking movements. That was, at least in the US, that was when the Constitution, the US Constitution was created and ratified. And at that time, it was seen as very kind of forward-thinking, socially conscientious advancement, and the dollar at that time was created. It's funny, we were talking about how cells, like we are electric, and how our cells carry current, and that was discovered at that time, how the cells actually carry current, electrical current. Shortly after Ben Franklin flew a kite, that was in the 1770s, late 70s, he flew a kite to capture electricity from lightning.
And that's pretty much Uranian, Aquarius.
Yeah, totally Uranian. So let's see what else happened at that time. There was let's see here. There's inventions. There was like steamboat was invented. There was kind of the stock exchange was invented, or the New York Stock Exchange was created. That was kind of a similarly advanced kind of social movement there. In this country, Congress was created, the Constitution was created. You know, Congress is a representative, it's part of the representative democracy, representing the people. And so that was again seen as this kind of advanced social movement towards kind of forward-thinking social welfare at a mass scale. You know, that's the US. I don't know as much about you know, the world abroad, but I'm sure that it was echoed elsewhere, because that's kind of a collective quality that was engaged at that place. Yeah, so you know, we'll probably see echoes of similar things, you know, like governments, and you know, who knows if it's even governments, you know, things like cryptocurrency. You have groups banding together to create kind of their own kind of culture and collective group identity. And so, you know, we might see similar stuff there, where it starts to talk about individual rights and the rights and roles and responsibility of the individual for the collective. These are all kind of common Aquarius topics. Yeah,
It's true. So it's exciting times ahead. And we are, and I don't think people realize this, but we are literally living history.
Yeah, it's
like
amazing.
You know, in 50 years time, it's going to be now in 2020, in the year 2020, the world went under a massive change when they had what we call in those days a pandemic. Yeah. This is in 50 years time, you know, schooling or whatever. And in 2022, they did something else. Like we're going down in history. And you know, you may not realize it, but with these planets shifting into signs that haven't been there for, you know, and in the case of Pluto, it's probably 240 odd years. And for some of the other planets, it's 144 years, 84 years, 30 years. These are big shifts. This is history in its making, you know?
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of it all.
I know, it's amazing. It's going to be like, you know, really what happens going into the future. Those people will look back at pre-2020 and pre-2020s when Pluto went into Aquarius, and they'll be like, oh, look at that quaint time, how life was like back before that. For us that lived through that, you know, we're not going to go back. We're not going to go back to the way things were then. We're kind of soaring into a new way.
We are moving forward as a world, as a collective, and we just kind of get on board, even me, you know. It's just part of what it is. But you know, as much it's going to be, I'm still going to try my best to keep my life as simple as possible.
Sure, why not? I mean,
because
I think
keeps me grounded, keeps me real.
Stay grounded, stay simple. Don't need to overcomplicate things. You know, one of the ways, the transformative aspect of Pluto, which is, you know, Pluto's really essential to the human psyche. We need to have this component inside ourselves that where we go through these periodic transformations, we kind of let go of what we were before and we transform into something new, individually, collectively. And actually, I think probably what's going to figure prominently, another thing that's going to figure prominently in Pluto and Aquarius, is that there's a movement of psychedelic assisted healing using psychedelic medicine. And that is kind of a technology, but it's a technology, maybe you could say spiritual technology, that is it's somewhat plutonic. You know, it really taps into the depths, the mysterious depths inside ourselves. So Pluto entering into Aquarius might take our technological kind of culture and give it a bit more depth, like give it a bit more of a kind of transformative depth that's tied in with this whole spiritual technology of psychedelic assisted healing. So that's a hopeful note, I feel.
Yeah, I do feel that healing methodologies will be very different, because, you know, Aquarius itself, its ruler Uranus, is all about electricity and energetic systems, the chakras, subtle energies, you know,
Right.
those kinds of things. And I do
Definitely.
feel that those, what I've just said will actually be expanded a lot more, and will be the, I'm not saying that conventional medicine will disappear, but I do feel that more alternative medicines will be more incorporated into the mainstay hospitals and GPs and stuff like that. And I feel it should be.
Totally. Makes you wonder if technology will segue with those energies, you know, like apps and the way people are talking about how, you know, we interface with technology in our phones, but technology might actually get implemented like into the body or whatever, you know, or like makes me wonder if somehow the technological advancements of things like apps will segue with the kind of spiritual technology of subtle energies of the body, chakras, meridians, things like that. If there might be a meeting point there, it'll be very interesting to see.
I would really be interested and looking forward to the to combination therapies, like you were saying, you know, like having them together, because I feel I just feel that the because, you know, Uranus, Aquarius rules astrology.
Right.
With Aquarius, Uranus was discovered.
Right.
I think it was discovered in the 18th century by somebody Herschel. They were
Herschel,
going to
yeah.
call it Herschel, actually, but they changed it to Uranus. And then
Yeah.
before that, the ruler of astrology was Mercury. So now it's been updated to Uranus. So even things like astrology and anything to do with those kinds of modalities are also going to be a lot more exposed and a lot more, I think they're going to become a lot more mainstream.
Excellent point. Yeah, I mean that Pluto and
Yep.
Aquarius could definitely support that.
I
Pluto, the
feel it
math
will, because
movement.
and I think it's about time. I mean, in places like India, as you know, major decisions, or actually any decision, is not made unless they see their local astrologer first.
Yeah, it's very commonplace.
It's, you know, it's very much commonplace, and I kind of feel that Western society will take that on board more mainstream. I mean, astrologers are more revered in India than doctors are.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, an interesting thing is that the Western medical tradition began with astrology. I mean, that's something that's not very commonly
True.
recognized, is that, you know, early doctors,
Hippocrates used to follow the moon.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the doctor, you know, and even European, you know, medieval, Western medicine. And I think even before that, they were expected to be adepts in astrology. That was the beginning. Yeah, for sure.
And it just, and considering I'm a medical astrologer, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, you know. So you know, because, you know, anyway, I'm not going to go into my stuff, but anyway, so so James, is there anything else that you just want to end with?
Well, just you know, I think a hopeful disposition. I think we've described kind of the qualities, things to be mindful of, things to be aware of, how we can think about taking our care of ourselves as we go through these shifting energies. And it's all hopeful. I think that, you know, that one aspect of astrology that's quite beautiful is that it allows us, it's really the practice, the art and the science of tapping into and seeing and marveling at the divine choreography around us, and seeing that it has a rhythm, it has a flow, it has a kind of it has a meaning to it, that, you know, things happen when they're meant to happen. It's like things are there's a divine dance happening that's really coordinated, and that if we have faith in, and when we go with it, it tends to reveal its beauty to us. And so with that in mind, I think Pluto and Aquarius is a great quality to be reminded of, that, to just think that, oh, okay, Pluto going into Aquarius is signaling something that's meant to happen for us now. So let's connect with that, marvel at it, and be mindful that this is what is meant to be happening. So let's make the most of it. And so that's kind of my final perspective for now. And I feel like we've done that today. I think we've kind of honored that.
I think I feel we have too.
Yeah.
So James, the best way to contact you if anybody wants to have an archetypal session with you?
Yeah, jamesmoran.org. That's my website. Please feel free. Connect with me
Nice and
there.
easy.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun material there. It's my free ebooks are there. You can book a reading with me. I'd be happy to get to know you.
And of
Yep.
course, you do regular talks on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, we have my YouTube channel, which is just James Moran Astrologer on YouTube, and then there's also the Archetypal News Network, which is a community of archetypal astrologers. My colleagues and I, we run that channel, and so there's always material coming up for archetypal astrology on YouTube. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking time out. I know there's a huge time difference between New Zealand and Washington. You're still in Washington, yeah? Yeah.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, thank you for taking that time out. We got a little bit confused with the time zones, but we got it all sorted in the end.
Thank you so much for having me.
So many blessings for Christmas to you and your wife, if I don't get to talk to you beforehand, and maybe we can catch up again in Authors Month in sometime in January.
That'd be great.
Okay. Blessings. Yeah.
All right. Bye.